There are letters that are never meant to be sent. Folded quietly into the corners of drawers, buried in notebooks, or crumpled with trembling fingers and slipped into a jacket pocket only to vanish with time. But some letters become stories, memories strung together by someone left behind, who can only retell what was and what could never be again. This is one of those stories. The light in apartment 4C flickered every third second, buzzing softly like a moth caught in a jar. The wallpaper peeled in curling corners, yellowed by time and smoke. Outside, the city was wheezing under a heavy summer dusk, one of those hot evenings where everything smells like steel and sweat. But inside the apartment, there was a kind of quiet that didn't match the world outside. Elena sat cross-legged on the worn carpet, thumbing the edges of an old envelope. "Dear Manny," it began. It wasn't the first letter, it wasn't the last either, but it was the one she'd never mailed. Not because she didn't want to, but because there was no address to send it to anymore. Because sometimes people don't leave forwarding addresses when they disappear. She hadn't spoken his name aloud in 3 years, but she was going to say it now. Write it down again, like tracing a ghost. Manny. Manuel Santiago Rivera. But no one called him by his full name, not even their abuela when she was mad. He was always just Manny. Sunlight in sneakers. Laughter wrapped in flannel, always smelling like coconut shampoo and secondhand bookstores. They'd grown up 3 doors apart in the same Bronx building where the elevator never worked and the hallway lights flickered like Morse code. From the time they were 8, Manny had this habit of showing up with 2 plastic spoons and a pint of corner store ice cream, always acting like she'd been waiting for him, even when she hadn't. He was the kind of person who talked to stray cats like they were old friends, the kind who could make up stories on the spot, weaving entire worlds out of sidewalk cracks and fallen leaves. He carried around a little notebook with a red cover, filled with scribbles and song lyrics and half-drawn dreams. And he loved letters. "Elena," he said once, flipping his pen between his fingers, "there's magic in writing something down and sending it off into the universe. It's like believing someone will hear you, even if they don't answer." He used to leave her notes in her locker, in the hem of her coat, once folded into the pages of a library book she hadn't checked out yet. "Dear Elena," he'd write. "The moon looked lonely tonight. Thought of you." Sometimes she thought she loved him even then. But they were kids, and kids don't say those things when they too busy pretending they done to feel them. It was senior year when things started slipping. Manny grew quieter. He stopped showing up with spoons and ice cream. His laughter dimmed, slow and crumbling like the ceiling paint above his bed. His notebook turned from red to black. And when Elena asked if he was okay, he'd smile in that way that felt like a goodbye. "I'm just tired," he said once, eyes heavy, voice low. "Tired how?" He paused. "Like, inside my bones. Like I've been holding something too heavy for too long." She wanted to ask what it was, but he changed the subject, and she let him. They still hung out, still talked about college and songs and books they never finished reading. But something was drifting. There were days when she'd knock on his door and he wouldn't answer. Days when he'd stare at nothing for long stretches, like he was somewhere else entirely. He wrote fewer letters, until one day he left her one last note. "Dear Elena, I don't want you to look for me. I know you will anyway. I'm sorry." There was no return address. Grief is not just a thing that shows up when someone dies. Sometimes it settles into the shape of absence. A coat that no longer smells like someone, a chair that stays empty, a song you can't hear anymore without blinking too fast. Elena searched, of course. She walked through neighborhoods she didn't know, asked kids on street corners if they'd seen him, called shelters, checked hospitals. Once, in the deepest part of winter, she took a train upstate to a halfway house because someone thought they recognized his photo. It wasn't him. She stopped looking eventually, not because she stopped caring, but because every closed door hurt more than the last, and life, as cruelly as it does, went on. She graduated, moved into a studio apartment with a leaky faucet, got a job shelving books at a library downtown. She smiled when people expected her to, laughed when she needed to, and wrote letters to someone who never answered. Dear Manny. She wrote on his birthday. Do you remember the time we got caught in the rain and you said thunder sounded like God was bowling? There were hundreds of them folded into a shoebox under her bed, all beginning with the same 2 words, all ending with none. 3 years later, in the cold stillness of February, a stranger came into the library. He was about Manny's height, wore the same kind of scuffed boots Manny used to. But it wasn't him. He browsed for an hour, then came to the desk with a pile of books and a question in his eyes. You, Elena? He asked. She nodded, cautious. He handed her an envelope. I was told to give this to you, from someone I met, someone who talked about you like you were sunlight. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a single page, in handwriting she hadn't seen in 3 years. Dear Manny. I'm sorry I disappeared. I didn't know how to stay. I didn't know how to explain what it felt like to wake up and wish I hadn't a tea. I didn't want to leave you, not really. But something in me broke and I didn't know how to ask for help without feeling like I was drowning you too. I thought maybe if I left, you'd forget me, but I never forgot you. I wrote you letters, hundreds of them, just like you used to write me. I kept them in a blue box. Someday, maybe I'll have the courage to give them to you. I hope you're okay. I hope you found a way to be happy. You deserve that. With everything, always. Manny. Elena read it twice, then a third time. Then she cried. Not the kind of cry that comes like thunder, but the kind that sneaks out in gasps, in tremors. She didn't know where he was, not really. The man who brought the letter didn't have an address, just a city name, a shelter, and a first name. But for the first time in 3 years, Manny wasn't just a ghost in her chest. He was alive. That night, Elena pulled out her box of letters, all 214 of them. She read each one, quietly, as the city buzzed outside. Then, with trembling hands, she picked up a pen. Dear Manny. I never stopped looking for you. Not really. You were in every song, every sunset, every shadow I mistook for something more. I was so angry when you left, angry that you didn't trust me enough to let me carry some of the weight. But now I think I understand. Sometimes the darkness gets so loud, you can't hear the love trying to reach you. I forgive you. Not because I have to, but because I love you. Still. Always. I hope wherever you are, you've found peace. Maybe even joy. And if you ever want to come home, you know where to find me. Love, always, Elena. She didn't send it, but this time, it wasn't because she couldn't. This time she believed he might come back. The door to the library opened one rainy Thursday. He didn't say a word, just smiled, soaked and breathless, holding a worn red notebook with her name scribbled on the inside. And for the first time in a long time, they both felt like maybe the story wasn't over, just beginning again.